Amy.
Hi, Arlen. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. Just a quick little bit about myself so you know a little bit about me before I jump in talking about literacy. I'm in my 23rd year of education, and I just love all things learning. I love to see kids learning on the basketball court and the football field and marching band, learning to read, all things learning that have to do with kids. I'm just super excited about that, and I always have been. I enjoyed school when I was a kid, and it's just something that I genuinely enjoy. Nothing is greater than watching kids at school and really having a time of their life. One of the best things I get to do in my job is get kids off the school bus every morning. And if you weren't awake yet, it will wake you up when you get to see them off the buses. So working with kids is a really great thing. Outside of school, I enjoy sports. I enjoy walking. I love a good bookstore. I love to go shopping for a book. And I'm a big Illini fan. And so tonight, after this, I'm headed to watch one of our kiddos' basketball games. So I think it's always neat to know a little bit about the person speaking because as much as I love literacy, there's things outside that I do enjoy very much too. So from this, it's on to basketball. So if you'll look with me here, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And today's objectives, we're going to talk a lot about the new Illinois Comprehensive Literacy Plan. And I want to break down for you what those objectives will look like. The first is we are going to give a summary of the Comprehensive Literacy Plan. There were a lot of number twos on the screen at first that told me that you're familiar with it, but you need next steps. We're going to get into that the second part of the session. We're going to discuss the purpose, the goals, and the objectives. And then we're going to talk about what does your current literacy picture look like at your school. There is no right or wrong answer. So if you're a number one and you said, I mean, I've heard of this plan, but I don't have a clue, that's great. I'm so glad you're here because I hope in the next hour you'll feel a little more confident. And if you are a number two or a 2.1 or a 2.5, I hope that you have some next steps and maybe even some confidence moving forward to see that this is a really great thing. I will say that I am very passionate about this because I worked with struggling readers for a long time, and I am not just blowing smoke. I've seen these strategies work, and that's why I'm such a proponent for it. I'm very proud of the state for pushing out this new plan. I think it's very needed, and I can say that I have seen children truly learn to read by using these different strategies and approaches. So we'll jump right in talking about the summary, discussing purpose and goals. We'll take some time to think about what your current literacy picture looks like, and then we'll get into the good stuff about what are our next steps. Okay, so the Comprehensive Literacy Plan was just released in January of 2024 through the State Board of Education, and they have stated that literacy is an urgent priority necessary to improve student achievement of lifelong literacy skills. And the new plan that has come out acts as a roadmap to enhance and unify core literacy instruction efforts statewide. I use that word roadmap because the idea is for us to put our own spin on things that are specific for our students' needs within our own districts. So it serves as a roadmap and not necessarily a strict outline. The plan has been designed to outline necessary supports and resources for literacy reform. We are ensuring that all students receive developmentally appropriate and evidence-based literacy instruction. And those are in bold because they are very important. We need developmentally appropriate and evidence-based literacy instruction for all of our students. Okay, and so we always want to know the why behind a new initiative. What's the purpose? Why are we doing this? Well, the state board has put out this new plan because we know that literacy plays such an important role in our students and their social and their life outcomes. And the most recent data that we have shows that 38% of fourth grade students are falling below basic reading skills. That is a lot. The next The next percentage here is even scarier. 67% of fourth grade students fall below proficient reading level. And then the trends are persistent in grades 8 through 12. And so it's not like it's improving. And then the last bullet point says there has been minimal improvement over several decades. So it's time to address this. I mean, we are not seeing the results that we need to be seeing with producing students that know how to read and read well. Here are the 3 goals of the literacy plan. Now, these are goals that the state board has set, and they're very simple. And I love that because they are applicable, and we know what we need to do, what 3 things we need to hit. The first one is the goal focuses on students. Every student receives high quality, evidence-based literacy instruction. And every time I see that word student, I think of my own children. I think of my neighbors' kids. I think of those kids that get off the school bus in the morning. And we remember that those kids are so valuable and they belong to someone who is putting their trust and hope in us each and every day to teach their children how to read. So when we see those words, every student, we really do mean every student, because those families rely heavily on us to bring about the children's ability to read. Goal 2 is that every educator is prepared and continuously supported to deliver high quality, evidence-based literacy instruction. And again, when I see that every educator, I'm thinking of all of the people that I've worked with through all of my years in education. All of those people, the men and the women that work day in and day out, working with our children, those people need to continuously feel supported, and we need to make sure that we're providing them with the information that they need so that they feel equipped and ready to roll in providing great literacy instruction. The plan does adhere to helping colleges and universities adjust their instruction so that young teachers who are just graduating and coming into the field of education will now have a better understanding of how to teach literacy, because people that were in college when I was, that we may have had a class that touched on that, but we didn't have a lot of deep study on the science of reading or how to teach children to read or the research behind it and what the brain does. So it's good to know that this isn't just being pushed out as professional development for us that are already in education, but now ISB will be working with colleges and universities so the up and coming educators will be receiving this information too. And then the third goal focuses on leaders, and that is every leader is equipped to create, maintain, and sustain equitable conditions for high quality, evidence-based literacy instruction. And as leaders, we certainly have a big responsibility to make sure that we are doing our parts to support educators and making sure that our children are receiving that great quality instruction. The plan's key components are as listed here: effective evidence-based literacy instruction, and we'll dive into what that truly means here in just a few slides. And then moving forward with educator professional learning, development, and of course support, and then effective literacy leadership. And then we have to think about what support and implementation considerations look like, and then what kinds of tools and resources we need to effectively implement a plan throughout our districts. One thing I mentioned briefly earlier that I want everyone to have a good understanding of is we are not told specifically from the state that we have to use a set of materials or specific assessments. We are encouraged to use our local district and school data to make sure that we are making the best decisions about literacy instruction that we know our students need. So the state has able to provide really good roadmap for us, but then they're giving us the ability to meet with teams and teachers and decide what we need that literacy picture to look like for our own individual districts. It's imperative that districts design local assessment strategies. And I'll talk about what that looks like in a little bit. Okay, so the first of the three goals is to be student focused. Now, this goal will be the lengthiest of the three that I talk about because we're going to talk about what we actually need to be seeing in classrooms. So as this one's going long, don't think, oh my gosh, it's so much info, because goal 2 and goal 3 are not as long. Okay, so again, first one is student focused, and every student receives high quality, evidence-based literacy instruction. We have to make sure that we are using teaching methods that are proven effective. So this takes away anything that's wishy-washy. We're not dabbling in a little this and dabbling in a little of that, but we are truly choosing and using effective teaching methods, and we absolutely have to have a strong tier and a strong tier 1 and evidence-based curriculum. And then also for our tier 2 and tier 3, we of course we need great supports there. But everything begins in our tier 1. We've got to have strong tier 1 curriculum and instruction. And then the third point is that assessments that will need to be used to accurately measure the progress of all learners. And when we use the word assessments, we're not just talking about random tests. We'll talk about what those really look like. Okay, here we have two different pictures, and I wanted to make sure that you're familiar with the development of what a reader looks like. The first one is called the simple view of reading, and if you look at the blue box, it says word recognition. And if you take word recognition and you multiply it by language comprehension, you will end up with the product of reading comprehension. It's called the simple view of reading because when you hear it like that, it really makes sense. So if you look at some examples below, you'll see that if you have no word recognition capabilities, okay, if you have a 0, but you can comprehend, like you can hear a story and listen to it out loud and comprehend, and you have great vocabulary, you're not going to equal reading comprehension because you are unable to do the word recognition. A student is unable to sit and read the words off the page. If you look at the next problem, some students have really great decoding strategies and they can read anything on a page beautifully. But when you ask them about what they've read, they look at you like, I didn't know I was supposed to connect with the words. They don't have an understanding of knowing that they're supposed to be interacting with the words in that language in the text. So again, that leads to 0 reading comprehension because they are able to read the words, but they don't know what they're supposed to be doing with them. And sometimes we think, well, they may be lacking a little bit in something, but if you look here, even if you have slight word recognition, like you're halfway there, and you can comprehend well, you still aren't at skilled reading comprehension. And then the bottom one is the scariest. So some kiddos that have a little bit of decoding knowledge and a little bit of comprehension knowledge, they come to very little reading comprehension. So if you look at the bottom, if you have a student that is wholly developed in word recognition and wholly developed in language comprehension, now we're getting to reading comprehension. Okay, so that equals a whole reader. And there on the side, I have it broken down by Scarborough's reading rope. And if you're into the science of reading or anything about brain research and learning about how our brains read, this is really phenomenal information. But if you see at the top, it says language comprehension and all of these different strands. These are the things that we are teaching each and every day during our reading blocks. And then go a little further down below, and there's word recognition. And again, these are coming the foundational reading classes. So when we're just learning to read, this is what kind of instruction takes place in there often. And you can see how all of those strands start to weave together. And if they keep growing and getting stronger, you'll see the rope becomes much tighter as you go. It's not fraying, there's no holes in it. That's where we reach skilled reading. If any of those strands is weakened, It's going to fray and not develop a strong, like shoestring. It's not going to develop a strong reader. So we'll be addressing what these different strands look like. Okay, some of you may have heard about the Big Five and when we're discussing the Big Five components of literacy. Illinois has created 7 components because we've added the top and the bottoms. We've added oracy and writing to the Big Five. So now we have oracy, phonological awareness, word recognition, which is your phonics, fluency, vocabulary, comprehension, and then we've added writing to this. I will say that the literacy plan is addressing all students up through 12th grade. So this is not just something that we think of like lower elementary or struggling readers. And as I show some slides with some ideas, I'll point out to you as the bullet points go down the page, some of the concepts get harder because they are more for older students as we go. Okay, if oracy is something that's new to you, it's something that is talked a lot about in like preschool or even in kindergarten, but it's the idea of just effective spoken communication. I'm not going to go through all of those bullet points, but you can see them on the screen. But oracy is just the idea of conversation and talking with students. So much can be built from conversation and just eye connections and learning from the kids as they express their thoughts or something that is exciting that they're trying to share with you. Reading a book out loud. You can see in the picture here, they have a big read aloud. And so those kids are being exposed to new language and they're seeing new vocabulary words. They are interacting with a book. But these are things that we do naturally that are really important, especially with young students. And if you have students that come from, especially like EL learners or students that come from a family where there's not lots of conversation, it's super important that at school we're holding lots of conversations and building that vocabulary and interaction with students. Okay, this is a big deal. Phonological awareness is the ability to recognize and manipulate spoken word parts. When we talk about that, we're talking about syllables, onset and rhymes, and phonemes. So a phoneme is the smallest unit of sound. So if we have like the word stomp, and you're working with kindergarten students or first grade students, and you ask them to break it into sounds, what they're doing is they're breaking it into phonemes. So as we walk into those early classrooms, kindergarten and first grade, quite often you're going to hear and see a lot of things going on that don't even require paper pencil. This is phonemic awareness. And so, like I said, the word stomp. If you see kiddos tapping out each sound, what they're doing is they're tapping that sound. And even though they don't even know those letters yet, or they don't know that the letter or the sound that it makes, you're prepping their brain, you're laying the foundation for them to begin the first steps of learning to read. So when they go s, t, ah, and they hear all those different sounds, you are setting a great pathway for beginning steps of learning to read. And research shows the more and more that we learn about teaching students to read, the more important this piece is. In fact, years ago, we didn't know this piece was so important, and we kind of just jumped into phonics and like teaching kids letters and sounds. But if kids get this piece, it will make learning the phonics that much easier. And actually, the research shows that if kiddos are missing something, you can so many times go all the way back to seeing that it was this part that they were missing. So in our kindergarten and first grade rooms, there is a lot of this going on. Okay, it's vital for reading proficiency and it's forming the brain connections between those speech sounds and the written symbols. You think of kiddos that receive speech services. This is something that the SLPs are working very hard on in those rooms because they're trying to help those speech sounds connect with that student's brain. We are also mastering phoneme segmentation and blending and substituting sounds. So if you've heard of word ladders, or if the teacher says, okay, take this word and we're going to drop this sound and add this sound. The kids aren't even writing anything yet, but they are learning to drop a sound and add a new sound. This is phenomenal work that's happening in those little brains because it's setting the paveway for good things to come. Again, like it says here, we're not even reading text. We're just talking about speech and sounds. Phonemic awareness instruction needs to happen each and every day, and it's quick and kids enjoy it. You can get a serious lesson done in about 15, 20 minutes. It doesn't require a lot of anything. There are all kinds of resources available online, but there are also good programs like UFly. So if you're taking notes, the University of Florida and Institute for Research, they have all kinds of great programs that address phonemic awareness. A lot of it's free. And then also, there's the Hegarty curriculum that's out there, and it's not that expensive either. But phonemic awareness needs to be taking place each and every day so that we can prepare kids to be ready for phonics. Okay, second we have, or I guess this would be third, we have word recognition, and this is when we're talking about phonics. So we're talking about the efficient and accurate identification and understanding of words, okay? Now we're getting to where students are relating that relationship between the letters and the sounds, and then they're going to apply that with their reading and their writing. So it's like we take that phonemic awareness and we go up to the next step. Now, here we are with word recognition. Basically, we're talking a lot about decoding. And if you walk into a first grade classroom, a kindergarten classroom, even second grade, you're going to see, or we should be seeing, a lot of decoding practice going on. The kids are recognizing letter patterns and they're recognizing all of those letter and spelling rules. We used to kind of just give kids spelling words to practice because we thought those were like grade level appropriate or common vocabulary words that kids might see. But we know better now. And we know that we really truly need kids to practice spelling the words and the patterns that they are learning each and every day during their phonics instruction. So if those kiddos are truly learning their phonics like we hope that they are learning them, you'll be able to give them a whole bunch of words to spell and change it up because they aren't learning to memorize set words of lists or set lists of words. I'm sorry. They are writing and applying the knowledge that you've been teaching them through their phonics. It is really cool to see that happen. Now we have morphology. We're getting to analyzing word structures, roots, and affixes. You can see that we're not just talking about kindergarten and first grade thing. Big kids need to know these things too. A lot of great things happen in third grade when we talk about morphology and helping students break down big words. If we teach children about syllables and their syllable patterns, it just opens their world up to decoding that much better. Because how many times have we known a student that's like, well, they just picked up on learning to read. They know what they're doing. They didn't even need the phonics. But by the time they reach third grade, they start to reach a little hiccup, or their parents or a teacher might say, I don't know what's going on. This kid's always been such a strong reader. That may be the case, and they may have picked up really quickly when they were young, but they still need to know how to decode. Because when they start reading third and fourth and on, when they get to those higher reading levels, they're going to have multisyllabic words that they need to know how they can approach those words and decode them so that they can take their brains, break that word apart, gather meaning, and keep reading. Okay. So it doesn't matter if a kiddo is picking up on reading really well or not, we still want to give them the ability to know how to decode. Because when they hit those words that have lots of syllables, that's a very, very resourceful skill. And then orthographic mapping, that happens in the brain, and it's the goal of phonics. We don't want children to go to sixth, seventh, and eighth grade and still rely heavily on the phonics rules that they learned when they were younger. The idea is that it becomes so mapped in their brain that they don't have to rely on it anymore. It's just like learning to ride a bike. At first, we have the training wheels, or we might have someone that holds on to the back and they're right there with us as we're learning. But before long, the more we practice, the more confident we get, and we don't rely on looking down on the ground and making sure that the training wheels are there. It starts to become natural, and we don't rely on those training wheels or having the support there any longer. That's the same thing with reading. As long as we provide those supports early on and we practice, 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 the goal of phonics is to be beyond that. We don't have to rely on it anymore. Encoding is the writing. So we want students to be able to learn what they are putting in their brains and then able to write it out like they're spelling. And of course, we need to do lots of modeling. So modeling writing, and again, this is going to be not just in lower grades, but upper grades. We must explicitly teach phonics using a scope and sequence. I know, it used to be popular to say, well, I'm dabbling and I only do phonics when I know that the kids are struggling with this certain concept. That is no longer acceptable because research proves it over and over again that students learn to read when it's done explicitly and when we follow a great scope and sequence. So that is something that we can all make sure as leaders that we implement throughout our school districts and our school buildings, that there must be a great game plan for a scope and sequence and that it's being explicitly taught. And then decoding and encoding with more complex and letter patterns. Those are things that will be coming as the kids do more things with more syllables. Okay, and then I want to talk about fluency. This would be where am I at? Fourth goal of the 7 in the plan. And again, all of these parts are so important, but here in the next slide, I'm going to show you just why crucial fluency or how crucial fluency is to learning, okay? Fluency is the ability to read text accurately, swiftly, and with proper expression. Now, when we think about somebody reading fluently, think back when you were a student and you are hot and sweaty and you've just come in from like your lunch recess and you get to lay your head on that cool desk and the fan's going and you're listening to your teacher read a chapter book out loud. It is the best feeling for a kid in the world to come in and hear a read aloud after they are so hot and worn out from playing at recess. And that teacher sets a wonderful example, and he or she models what fluent reading looks like. That kiddo's brain doesn't have to focus on decoding. They aren't looking at the words and trying to figure out anything unknown. They are just setting their heads on that cool desk and listening. Okay, all of the fluency is being done by the teacher, and the teacher is showing and modeling what that looks like. Now, we want that to happen in the students' brains too. We want the students to become so fluent that as they're reading, they're able to create that effortless flow of reading the words and connecting with the text, just like the teacher is reading out loud to them. Okay. Fluency is the critical bridge between the word recognition, which is the phonics, and the comprehension, which is the ultimate goal of reading. So the fluency is what's going to create that bridge between the two. The reason we have to create that bridge is because there are different parts of our brain that are being activated when we are providing instruction to these different goals, okay? So when we're talking about phonemic awareness and phonics, that's lighting up one part of the brain. But when we're talking about comprehension and vocabulary, that's lighting up another part of the brain. So we want fluency to help bridge that gap between the two parts of the brain. Again, we're going to model what that oral reading looks like, and we're going to explicitly teach different sentence types, and we're going to do simple and compound sentences. We're going to pre-teach vocabulary so kids don't get stumped on it when they're reading. And then we want to engage students with a variety of texts and opportunities to either read with a partner, they can echo read with the teacher, they can sit and read to a stuffed animal if they're little. Like all of these things are opportunities to practice fluency. Okay, now as we look at the development of a reader, we're back to these two pictures that I shared with you earlier. And if you look at the simple view of reading, We are looking at so far, we've talked about hitting goal one, and that's addressing students. And we've just talked about word recognition. So all of the things we've talked about so far with oracy and phonological awareness and word recognition and now fluency, we are talking about word recognition. Okay. So over here on Scarborough's rope, down at the bottom, we're talking about those bottom three strands. Okay. If you look back over at the simple view of reading and there's that blue arc, that's showing how we're getting ready to take fluency to cover the gap between the language comprehension and the reading comprehension. Okay, that's why it's so important. Okay, before I move on to the second part of Scarborough's rope and the second part of the simple view of reading, does anyone have any questions that have been thrown in the chat box, or does anybody have a question that they want to throw in the chat box so far? We will talk about what those kinds of things look like again here in just a little bit. But does anybody have a question about any of those things? We good? Okay, okay. All right, well, I'm going to move on. And now we're going to talk about the second part of goal one, and this is vocabulary. So these are the words used in oral and written communication. We're talking about learning new words and understanding their meaning. And one of the best ways that we can build vocabulary is just through conversation, as we know that, okay? We need to take advantage of when kids say, what does that mean? Okay, those are great opportunities to have conversations about new words. Kids really like word knowledge activities. It's really fun. They enjoy those kinds of things. So doing all kinds of activities to build students' vocabulary, we need to teach word meaning and their usage, and we have to help them connect those words to words that they already know, or help them connect to words that they'll be learning about, especially when we're talking about other subjects like science and social studies. When we address prefixes and suffixes and word origins, just think about how if a kid doesn't know a word, but they know what the prefix or suffix means, they can start to attack that word on their own and hopefully use context clues and start to figure out the meaning of that word just because there's a part of the word that they do recognize. We can read a variety of text to expand vocabulary across all different subject areas. Okay, so this is not just in the reading room. And of course, reading and writing across many different subjects provides practice in using that new vocabulary. Okay, morphology, which I mentioned earlier, is so important with grades 3 and older. And a lot of times, or at least we used to say, kids are learning to read in kindergarten through second grade, and then they come to us in third grade, and now we start reading to learn. That's not completely false, but we know that students don't come to us at third grade just ready to shift and think, okay, well, I learned how to read and now I'm just ready to absorb it all. We still need to keep building that morphology and keep building that vocabulary so that those kiddos can keep getting better and lead to higher reading levels. Okay, comprehension is, of course, understanding what we're reading and then being able to interpret the text. So currently, I was just having a great conversation with one of our reading aides, and she is working solely with some kiddos on comprehension. These kids already are decoding well. They're doing a good job. All of their assessments show us that they are on track. We're pleased with where they're at for decoding, but they aren't quite connecting with the words yet. So because we use these screeners and assessments, we know that we need to give them something to address comprehension. That's what they're ready, to learn. And so the conversation that she and I were sharing is that a lot of kids don't understand that they're supposed to be connecting with those words. Books aren't as heavily a part of children's when they're little bitty like they were when we were. I mean, we have iPads and technology, and all of those things are great and have their place, but children don't interact with books quite as much as they used to. And, some children, when they hear read alouds, it's more so happening at school than it is anywhere else. And so we need to set that. We need to set what that looks like for those kids and let them know that we're supposed to be interacting with that text. We can do this by just practicing great comprehension skills. When we read out loud, we can say things like, gosh, I wonder what's coming next, or oh my gosh, that makes me so excited, or letting the kids see like, oh, the teacher is like, like she's getting into this book and she's like really connecting with that. Some kids don't understand that that's okay or that they need to do that. Another great thing for comprehension is for kids to realize like, wow, I just read all of that and I don't have a clue what I read because that happens with us. I mean, I don't know how many times I'm reading a book on the science of reading or a book on something with education, and I think, wow, there were a lot of big words in that, and there was a lot of information, and I have to go back and pick that apart. I need to reread because I grasped just a little bit, but I certainly don't think that I got the most of that. And so I tell myself, I need to go back and reread. I might need to underline, I might need to look up a word, but kids need to know and understand that that's reading. Reading takes a lot of effort. And it doesn't just come with, quickly reading a book and closing up and putting it away. But just think of the reward that comes from that effort and the knowledge that we're gaining and the conversations that we have. And that's what we want kids to get to when they understand the joy of comprehending. A couple other things there, building students' background knowledge. Gosh, really great books and getting kids like, I just think how much fun it is to teach social studies, especially like in fourth grade when you're talking about states and capitals, and kids get to see maybe for the first time in a book about other parts of the United States that they've not been a part of. And they get to read about that. That just opens their mind to these great things outside of their communities. So building comprehension is so important, but it's also fun. And the best way we can do that is with practice, okay? A lot of times we think about all of the things that we're doing throughout the day, but how long are the kids truly just practicing reading? I don't know. We've got to make sure that we put that into our schedule, that kids have time to practice reading. Okay, let's see. Okay, now we're going into writing. Okay, and this is, we're talking about a fundamental literacy skill that allows expression of thoughts and ideas in print. Okay, we should start writing activities when kids are young. It's so important, and they love it. They're so excited to show you what they're writing. When they're learning to read and write, it goes hand in hand. It is so great to see them do this together. In fact, when I worked with struggling readers, nothing was better than to see them work through a book and then write for me some sentences about what they read. And they would draw a little picture and they would be so proud of showing you what they learned. Reading and writing go hand in hand. It's not like we go to the reading room teacher and then we go to the writing room teacher. They work together. And while we're practicing reading and writing together, we're able to teach decoding. Kids can write simple sentences. They're practicing writing their sight words. They're putting their thoughts down on paper. They're communicating. They're learning grammar. Just think of all of the great things that happen in a short writing activity. Okay. And of course, the more the kids learn to write, as you see the bullet points go down, of course, we'll get to advanced writing skills. But all of that starts with very, very simple skills when we learn to write at a very young age. Okay, I told you goal one was the lengthiest. Now we'll move into goal two, and that is educator focused, okay? And that is that we have an idea now of what the literacy plan, what their 7 goals are, okay? We know what kinds of things we should be seeing throughout classrooms. Those 7 different topics that I just talked about, those are the kinds of things we need to be seeing in classrooms that are explicitly being taught, not left for guessing, okay? Now we need to talk about the second part of the whole comprehensive plan, and it's educator focused. And that means, how do we get educators on board with all of this? Okay. Well, they have to have some background knowledge and understanding of what this looks like. And the only reason we're going to be able to do that is through really great professional development and then support and allowing them time to work and collaborate with other teachers that are also going through this together. these are great opportunities for teachers to work together for a great goal. And your rock star teachers out there, I mean, they are excited about this plan because they are like, yes, there is finally something out there that is like, grounded in research, and they want the support. These are your teachers that are like, gosh, I've known for a long time that there's a way to do better. Let's make it happen. So if we support our educators and give them great professional development and make sure that we have high quality evidence-based literacy instruction across all content areas, we can't go backwards. We are going to see great things come from that. So we have to support our educators in making sure that they have what they need in order for this to come to fruition. Another thing that we have to make sure that our educators know and that we support is that instructional time is so, so valuable. Reading is not natural. It doesn't come supernatural like learning to talk. 95% of children can learn to read, though, when we give them explicit instruction. That's what we're talking about with these 7 different areas. So 95% is a great amount of kids that can learn to read, okay? We're even talking about children that have reading disabilities, or reading that they have struggled with learning to read, or they might have dyslexia. We're talking about 95% of children can learn to read when we do it with explicit instruction. So what we do with that instructional time is so important. I said to you earlier how much I enjoy sports. I often think of like your really great coaches, and they go in with a game plan. And their practices are not left for chance. Their practices, they carry that clipboard and they have down to the minute what they're going to work on. And it's explicitly being coached. That's what we want our lesson plans to look like. And that's what we want our teaching to look like. Our instruction needs to have an explicit approach to it because we all have the same amount of time. It's what we're going to do with that time that really brings about winning in the classroom. Okay, and then the third goal, see, we flew right through goal number 2. The third goal is leader focused. And this means as leaders, we need to make sure that we are equipped to create and maintain. So it doesn't mean just push it out there. We've got to maintain and then sustain equitable learning conditions. We have to have high quality evidence-based literacy instruction. There's not a chance to chance this. We have to make sure that that's happening. Again, 95% of our kids learning to read or taking a chance on it. Literacy leaders have to promote literacy success. We all have to hold each other accountable for instruction and for outcomes. That's all of us. Every one of us needs to be accountable for making sure that our kiddos learn to read. It's super important. Okay, now, several of you that were number 2s were like, okay, that's the summary. Now help me get to the next step. Okay, here we go. Don't panic. This is a really positive thing, okay? This plan will bring about great things as long as we stick to it, okay? So don't panic. It's a positive thing. Those of you that know good things come from alignment, this is when you get excited because you're like, yes, here we go. We're going to have some good things. This can bring about some great alignment throughout your school district. We are saying that we are committed to our students, to their families, and to our children's learning, okay? So good things will come from this plan if we implement it, if we monitor it, and then we make adjustments as we go, okay? So we've got to have a great game plan. Okay, first thing that we need to do is we have to take a look at our current literacy picture. That means whatever school district you're at, stop and think, what does literacy look like in my school building? What does it look like in my classroom? What does it look like throughout my whole grade level? What does it look like in the grade level above and below me? What does it look like in other buildings within our district? Okay, so you've got to look at your current literacy picture, okay? So those are all kinds of things there. And like Arlen said, we'll share this with you later, so you'll have this slide later to help get your brain going. But all of these are things that you need to stop and think about. What does my district look like when you take a snapshot of where you're currently at? Okay, Then we have to start thinking about support and implementation considerations. Because once we have that snapshot and we know what the picture looks like, now we need to think, okay, if this is what we look like and this is what where we want to be, how am I going to get from point A to point B? Okay, the first thing, you've got to start talking with the literacy experts in your district, okay? Meet with those people. We're talking about your instructional coaches, your kindergarten, first grade teachers that are already teaching explicitly, your curriculum directors, your principals, teacher leaders, your your special education reading interventionist. Who do you have that's within your district that really gets it? Okay, that's where you need to start. And then you just start having conversations. Talk to them about where do they see your current literacy picture? Where do they think you can be? What would you like to look like in a year from now, or 2 years from now, or 3 years from now? You've got to get the ball rolling, starting to talk with what we currently look like. Okay. Now, once you get that conversation started, you can start to assess what your picture looks like. And then you need to know, what do we want it to look like? Okay. You need to create a vision for what that's going to look like and how we're going to stay on track. I know that those sound like buzzwords, and you're like, yeah, right, Amy. That's everybody says that. Create a vision and a mission. I'm telling you, if you write it down and your team says this is what we're going to do, now, when you have your professional development, you go back to that goal and you ask yourself, okay, am I aligning this to what I said we're going to do? Okay. And when you put out your Friday afternoon notes to prep for the following week, you list that on there so everybody sees it. You make sure that you're not just giving lip service, but that you're really truly saying, this is what we're going to do. And then the more we say it and the more we put it places and the more we bring it up in our conversations, the more it becomes a reality. Okay. Now we have to start by setting one specific goal. We can't just say, well, you know what? It's time to turn this reading ship around, and we need to make sure that next year every kiddo, 95% of them, is reading on track. We've got to have a rhyme and a reason how we're going to get there. So set one specific goal. It may start with, we need to look at what we're doing for our phonemic awareness and our phonics instruction. That may be the first step, okay? It may be getting your people all together and having them start answering some questions that come from the ISB literacy plan, because it's packed with great materials, okay? But you need to decide what's your first step of action. And then once you feel like you're tackling or addressing that first step, you'll let that first step help decide what your next step is, okay? You need to build a collaborative team, okay? You've got to start talking about, how are we going to, we say that we want to get here. How are we going to consistently measure our students' growth and make sure that those things are happening? Of course, our professional development has to be aligned with what we say we're going to do. How are we going to communicate with families in the community that this is that we say we're taking this big initiative on and we want good things to come from it, okay? And then everything must be data driven. We always have to evaluate and reflect and then make adjustments, okay? That's absolutely necessary. Okay, here is a picture of ISB's implementation process. And then I put the QR code up there. It will take you directly to this picture. If you want to have that like for a quick snapshot, or if you want to email that to yourself. But this is exactly a game plan that ISB has put out for implementing what that might look like throughout your district. And they've got it broken down into separate steps. This is new, okay? Last January, they didn't have this put out, but this has been put out just lately. So this is a new resource, but this will help you with a game plan, okay? And then ISB has said that these are the 4 phases that they're providing. The first is awareness and engagement, okay? So that was last January through this summer. And now phase 2, providing literacy and support for local plan development. That's where we're at right now, okay? So I will tell you that the ISB website is loaded with information that it wasn't just a few months ago. If you were on there even a month or 2 back, there's new information being added quite frequently. Phase 3 and phase 4, you can see there professional learning and strategic alignment. Okay, these are the things that are coming from ISB. Okay. Oh, let's see what I do there. There we go. Okay, ISB provided guiding questions. All right. If you look at the top, it says there's a teaching or teacher's reader with guiding questions. Okay, that QR will take you right to, it's like a 30-page document. That is a great way for your upcoming school improvement day or any like some professional development time that you have. That is a great way to put teachers in teams and have them read that together and sit and as a grade level team or as a content level team and start answering questions. Okay. This is a team effort. It doesn't mean 2 or 3 or 4 people are creating this plan. We need to make sure that everybody understands that what happens in one classroom needs to happen in this classroom because we want consistency and we want all kids to have that opportunity to learn to read. So that's a great resource. And then this is really big. If you look down in the corner, it says local district literacy plan template. You guys, this is brand new and ISB just put this out. It's fabulous. So if you're a number 2 on the first question and you're like, gosh, I just need some guidance and I know enough about the plan, but I need to know how do we take our next steps. They created a template for us. So if you look at that, you can type into it, you can print it, you can use it to start taking notes on it, but it's a great template, a plan of action for moving forward for your district. Really great resource. Okay, I always make sure that I stress this to people that as educators, like we're always working so hard and we want great things for the kids, but we can't forget to communicate with the kids. So listen, those kids have got to understand what their role is in learning. So we want to make sure we do that by setting learning targets. If they're big kids, we need to talk about what big idea it is that they should be learning. And we have to hold the students accountable for their own learning so that they have ownership and that they understand like, hey, I come to school every day and have a job. This is my role as a kiddo, and I'm supposed to come and grasp something from these lessons. Okay. So we can't forget the student's role in the plan as well. Okay, I'm sharing this as a sample. This is by no means the end all be all, but I want to show you a sample of what our district has done. Okay. We were really excited when they put out the literacy plan and we said, yes, we've needed some guidance on this for some time. And we wanted to first thing we felt we needed to address was we understand that we have like some great curriculum going on. We have explicit teaching going on, but our next steps needed to be address common assessments. We had to know if those kiddos were truly meeting the mark that we want them to meet the mark, and not just by beginning, middle, and end of the year, but we wanted to have some benchmarks that were set based upon student learning. Okay, so if you look here, we have kindergarten through second grade, that we have them being tested 4 times throughout the year, and that is as their curriculum is growing with them. We are trying to ensure that they are ready to move on to first grade at a beginning first grade reading level. Same thing for first grade and second grade. We're providing those assessments. We even have them being collected and graded by one person because we want consistency and we want to see if there is a hole in student learning. We take that information directly to the reading interventionist and we say, this kiddo is missing it right here, missing the mark right at this particular hole, and we can catch it before it gets too far gone. Okay, 3rd through 5th grade, we didn't buy anything new. We looked at our current curriculum that we already have, and we started digging and seeing what do we have that's available that we can use as a common assessment. And when you know it, there was some great stuff that we weren't even aware of. So we're using that for our 3rd through 5th grade. And then our 6th through 8th and our 9th through 12th grade. It's been very difficult to find something that we can use as a common assessment for our older kids. After having conversations with our ELA teachers of the upper grades, we all said, you know what, let's give Common Lit a look. A lot of our teachers really like to use their free resources that are online. We looked into their assessment piece and we said, for 1 year, we're going to try it and see what that looks like. Okay. So we are in the stages of putting in common assessments. We've been collecting that data and we know exactly what students we need to target with exactly what interventions so that we can help them close that learning gap before it gets too big. Now, I've got some additional information here at the bottom. Just these are the details about our plan, but it's super important to make sure that we understand that our tier one is where everything is happening. Okay, every kiddo is getting this explicit instruction. Tier one is so important. That way we can find where the gaps are and address those students in tier two or tier three. Also, I just want to I put here at the very bottom, our plan is a work in progress. We absolutely are already thinking of adjustments that we need to make for next school year, but this was a great way for us to start this school year. Okay, so don't look at that and think that this is the end all be all, or you may see some flaws with it. Okay, but for us, this was a great way for us to kick off this school year, and we are committed K-12 to sticking to this through, and we've been giving these assessments. Okay, I want to show you here. Okay, everybody says and asks me all the time, Amy, what do we have to do? What does ISB say we have to do? Just tell me what I have to do. Okay, well, I know that ISB has put out this guidance. It says each school district shall establish learning objectives that are consistent with the State Board of Education's goals and learning standards for the areas referred to in this section, and that we should develop appropriate testing and assessment systems for determining the degree to which students are achieving the objectives, okay? And then we're supposed to develop reporting systems. All right, so this is the guidance that ISB has put out on, this is on page 9 of the literacy plan, okay? I don't know, and I'm sure that there will become more guidance as I say that the ISB website is loaded with information, but this is what's listed on page 9. So I would say a good place to start is with common assessments and then keep that data so you can see just how much your kiddos are growing, okay? One more thing I want to tell you about this QR at the bottom is ISB has just put out brand new, I mean, just like hot off the press, brand new professional development that's free and it's really good. So if you're looking for ways to tap into the literacy plan and just bringing some knowledge of what this is going on, you can have teachers sign up. They have to register. So there's the link to register. And then you'll have all these different modules that have been provided through the state. And you can provide little lessons for your teachers, give them CEUs so that they can learn some more things about the literacy plan or one of those big 7 goals. At the end of each section of the literacy plan, there are book suggestions for further reading. So if you're like, gosh, I feel pretty good about 4 of the 7 or 6 of the 7, but one of them I really feel like I'm struggling with, you can look for further reading, okay? And if you look here on this slide, I put a couple different books on here or suggestions, but of course the comprehensive literacy plan is loaded with information and you can read that. It is lengthy, but I mean, you can read through that. I put this book here. It's a very simple, easy to read book called Reach All Readers. And I got mine on Amazon, but it's written especially for kindergarten through 2nd grade or for students, teachers that are teaching students that are struggling with learning to read. The writing revolution is a whole new, opening my eyes to a whole new world of teaching writing. We have done this as a book study in our district, and it was such a hit that we're going back for round 2, you guys. We're coming back. We're having more. 2nd semester, Writing Revolution 2.0. So, but we have teachers that are excited and they're like, gosh, I can't wait to collaborate with the teachers of other grade levels or in one of the other buildings and talk about how we can develop really strong writers, okay? Shifting the Balance is another really great book. There's a Shifting the Balance book, and then there's another one that came out for the upper grades. So if you're a teacher of like grades 6th and up, and you're like, gosh, I just want to know more what I can do to help bring the literacy plan for my big kids, Shifting the Balance, there's 2 different ones, but the second one is for upper grades. I mentioned UFly earlier, and there's a picture of it on our slide here. If you're like, I just don't even know where to begin, You can buy a copy of that book for really reasonably priced, and it is so explicit. It tells you step by step what to do. Wonderful. And districts are all across the state are using it in their tier 2 or tier 3 interventions. Of course, the state board website provides some great links. YouTube, if you just go onto YouTube and you do a search for show me an explicit phonics lesson, you're going to see exactly what I mean about how much bang for your buck you can get in a short amount of time in phonemic awareness and phonics. I mean, that you talk about a great game plan, you will see things happening minute by minute. And then I put two more books there that these are really big information. One's called Assessing Reading, Multiple Measures. If you have kids that move into your district and you have no idea where they should be at, if they like, let's say their mom or dad says that they've been homeschooled for the last couple years, but you know that they are not up to snuff for third grade reading level, but they say they should go in third grade. You give one of these assessments and you will know quickly right where you need to start their interventions. It's a fabulous resource, and you really only need one per building. And then the teaching reading source book, which is next to it, that goes along with the multiple measures. So once you see where the holes are in a kiddo's learning with that assessment book, now you can go over to the teaching reading source book and you can find exact explicit ways to help fill in those gaps. Great resource. Okay, I have to show you here, we're right at the end. So I have to show you John Wooden, former fabulous basketball coach. John Wooden's 8 laws of learning are explanation, demonstration, imitation, and then it's repetition, 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 and more repetition. As we know, when we're teaching students how to read, or if we're just getting better at learning to read, we must practice. We have to practice, practice. Even if you're going through this and you think, gosh, I'm getting so tired of teaching the same thing, that's okay because you're creating those pathways in those little guys' brains so that they get from phonics to fluency. Okay, and again, remember, we are developing strong readers by using the simple view of reading and by also using Scarborough's reading rope. We're going to address all of those different components. Okay, and I have to leave you with one of my favorites, and that is I'm a Rocky fan. I always have been. I love all of the Rocky movies, and Rocky did not go out and win a boxing match by just stepping in and taking care of business. But he had an action plan and he practiced and he went through all of the physical labor to get to the point where he was able to do one step at a time. And then he even says in one of the different movies, one step at a time, one punch at a time, one round at a time. And that's how we develop strong readers. We take it step by step, and each step leads to the next round. Okay, so just think of Rocky as we're taking things one step at a time. And the last thing I want to share with you is it's so, so important to celebrate the progress and the success that we're having along the way. Okay. These kiddos, you are the delight in their day. So the things that we are doing each and every day to help them learn to be a strong reader, it doesn't come from something that we do occasionally, but it comes from something that we do consistently. And when we walk into a classroom, we're not looking at what kind of great things the teacher, we're looking at what the students are learning. And when we see what those students are doing, we know it's because of that effective teacher, okay? And the last thing there is that teachers can change the world by one great lesson at a time. And we know that to be true, okay? So make sure that you, throughout your districts and with your teachers and with the students, that you are celebrating. Even if you just take one step forward, that's one step in the right direction, okay? So make sure you celebrate that progress and the success that you have. Please reach out to me with any questions. I'd love to talk with you about literacy. It is my true desire to see boys and girls across the state grow in their learning to read. Okay, thank you so much.
Amy, thank you so much for sharing all this wonderful research and resources with us. Such a deep dive into the literacy plan, very comprehensive, just as the plan is called. So that's been great. I've got a couple of questions that came in Q&A. Amy, do you have a minute to answer them?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to.
Okay, I understand if anyone needs to log out, it is after 4. But if you do have any questions, type them into the chat or the Q&A, and we'll see what Amy has for us. The first one comes from Faith, and she says, is it going to be required for each district to have a board-approved plan?
Faith, as of now, I have not heard that, but I do check quite frequently to see updates. That's why I put that little blurb in there about page 9, because when I went to something last year to learn a little bit more about the plan, I remember hearing the speaker say, "We know this is good for students, and we know it's great for learning, and so why we would want." We don't want to get caught with not having it in place. If we implement this and we're doing a great job, we just need to have that documentation down so that we can show it. Like I mentioned earlier, I think having your assessments and showing the data, I think keeping a record of that would be very, very wise. I also think that it's maybe an indicator that the state has put out a template for us just lately. I think that's another indicator too. I would want to err on the side of caution.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Amy.
Mhm.
A couple people have asked, will we get copies of the presentation? Amy, I've got your link to the Google Slides, so I
Yes,
will send out a link to this PowerPoint tomorrow when I send the recording out
absolutely.
to
Yes,
everyone. So
yes.
that's just wanted to clear that up. Kimberly asked, my staff is asking if they get CPDUs for doing that ISB literacy plan modules.
So I asked that same question today when I was at our local ROE, and I was told that when a teacher signs up for, because they let me think, they put out a syllabus and it tells you exactly what the different modules are. But I was told from the ROE today that when people log in and do and complete a module, that something comes to them to receive the CEUs.
Okay, very good. I'm just scrolling through chat here. Oh, Amy, would you mind sharing your contact info? Do you have a slide with your email address, Amy, or would you type it into the chat?
You know what? I didn't put that on the last one, but I will. I sure will. I'll add that on here. And when I share, well, I guess you have it, Arlen, but on the last slide, I will put my name and my email and my all my contact information.
Okay, that sounds great. Let me look through and see a lot of well dones, a lot of thank yous to you, Amy, in the chat.
Thanks, everyone.
And I'm just double checking to see if any other questions. Let me open Q&A here. Double checking to make sure we've answered all the questions that people have typed into chat. Okay. Looks good, Amy. Thank you so much for your time, your expertise. Really appreciated you reaching out to me and setting up to do this webinar with our all of our IPA members and our Ed Leaders Network subscribers as well.
You bet. Thanks for having me, Arlen. I appreciate it.
Okay, great. Well, thank you to all of our participants for logging in and enjoying this webinar and participating. I will be following up with everyone tomorrow with a link to the recording, a link to the evaluation for getting your ISB evidence of completion form. This is worth 1 PD clock hour. The approved provider for this presentation is the Illinois Principals Association, but it will say that on the ISB evidence of completion form that you'll get for completing the evaluation. So take care, everybody, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye, Amy.
Bye. Thank you, Arlen.